Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Apollo Missions to the Moon. This is a National Geographic documentary. It's from 2019. It's an hour and 36 minutes long, and there's a lot of space-related moon and space mission type of documentaries from National Geographic on Disney Plus, taking it from different angles. There's even a dramatic series that goes over the history of it, of specifically men who would eventually be the first to land on the moon. We have, which is more of a drama. It's just sort of recreating that moment. We have some that talk about the technology. We have some that talk about the people who worked on the computer systems and just all the details that had to go into just making even such a thing possible. The people who coded all the technology that was required to get men on the moon had less power than this thing I'm holding in my hand, yet it took up buildings worth of computers. It's a miracle that humanity has bothered to step on the moon. And before I go any further, I know there's some people out there who are like, "Oh, we've never been to the moon. It's all fake. They all made it up in a studio." Whatever. Understand that nobody takes you seriously in your life. Period. They're just like, okay, whatever. You're not a serious person. Why do I say this? Because think about the time in which we were in competition with the Ruskies, the Russians, the whole Cold War thing. And we were fighting to get to be the first in the space, the first on the moon, first anywhere. We're still doing it to a certain degree, even though that competition is not as strong. It's strong in other ways. That's what we had back then. Was the Russians getting into space first, making some major accomplishments, and it was that push that got Kennedy and so many others to say, we gotta move, we gotta have dominance, we gotta beat the Russians to the moon. And had we not made it to the moon, the Russians would make it very clear that we had not made it to the moon. They would have drilled that into our heads. There's no way that we would have made this in a movie studio and the Russians would have went, they would find out. They would find out that we never went to the moon. If we never went to the moon. We went to the moon. That's it. And this tells the story of the many missions that took through the Apollo series of rockets that would get us there, including the failures, resulted in the death of a number of astronauts, and the the successes, especially with Apollo 8, Apollo 11. Why we skipped numbers, I realize. Eventually we ended up finishing, I think, with Apollo 17. 17 or 18 was the final thing. Apparently I wasn't paying attention to that part because the numbering was really confusing to me. That we've gone to the moon many times since that first moment. But what this documentary is all about is setting the stage for the stakes, the way the world was looking at it back then. Yeah, there was a lot of people who were like, why are we spending money to go to the moon when we can't take care of the people here? Yeah, it's a pretty good question. Yeah, when people are starving, people are hungry. And it's a valid question that I've asked myself over the years. But what we do here, what we do in space, the technology we bring to bear, is what pushes us forward in other disciplines. That's the word I was looking for. In other disciplines, to bring us to a place where, hey, the technology improves across the board, not just in space. When it comes to feeding the astronauts in space. Just getting them into space is one thing, but getting them home is another. And everything in between is just crazy. We throw them into a deadly vacuum, buffered only by a metal shell, and other stuff too, but a metal shell. I mean, we have a hard enough time. Some people are afraid of going on a flight from one state to another. But imagine taking a flight that goes completely off planet to an orbiting moon that no one's ever been to. Taking care, just being able to handle radiation, just particles in space, everything, all these things. Imagine having to do all that and go, you know what? I think we're going to survive the trip. There's a number of different disciplines, and part of that is just being able to eat when you're up there. I mean, we recently, right now, we have even people on the International Space Station that, they're stuck there for a couple months. Unless something's changed since I last checked, I don't know. But there were some people who, they went up there with the understanding they'd be there for maybe a few weeks. It might not come back till 2025. Mistakes are made, but how are they going to eat? Well, you know what? We have the ability to bring ships into space that will provide food for them. Maybe not get them down in the same type of ship, because money is always involved, but technology also is an important part of all these things. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go into the what have we never done before? Let's create the technology to make it possible, to make it real. And that's what our space program has done. It's not just, hey, let's put a rocket together and throw it into space, and maybe some people will walk on a moon and then come home. Maybe. No, there's everything from programming that the time, the space, just everything that goes into moving such objects from place to place, but everything in between. When it comes to breathing, when it comes to eating, when it comes to pooping, when it comes to doing all these little things, that technology, that understanding of technologies can be applied to other places. Well, we haven't solved hunger yet, solved the issue with worldwide starvation, which is still an issue. And but what we have here, these people who jumped in these ships, were the inspiration for a little thing called Star Trek. And Star Trek has inspired other astronauts. And in Star Trek, there's a future. And I realize it sounds like an impossible dream, but in a future where no one is hungry, where people have the ability to live better lives, unhampered by poverty and hunger and fear of war. It's something, it doesn't exist now, but it's something that can be overcome, just as putting a man on the moon was impossible at one time. Even though people, even in ancient times, fantasized about going to this heavenly body, not knowing exactly what it was. Was it a god? Was it where God lives? Was it, what was it? And that's the philosophical aspect of this. But what they go through is looking at the humanity of the people that took the risk to get there, the people that worked so hard to get them there. It's not like we're going into Buzz Aldrin's personal life or everything else, but we do see interviews with their family and what they understand. They understand the risk that, hey, guess what? We had to agree that in order to make this decision to go into space, to maybe step on the moon, they may not come back. And it's an understanding that the family had to make. It's an understanding that with the early deaths of other astronauts or the early missions, that America, the world, knew the risks. Russia was looking very closely to see what we would do and what we would not do. And if we didn't do it in good time, guess what? They were going to. Was it a pissing contest? Was it something that's like, oh my gosh, we're better than you? To a degree, sure. To another degree, it shows superiority technologically and everything else. And since then, We in the United States have been technologically superior to the Russians pretty much ever since. Yeah. Ask them how the Ukraine war is going. A country like Russia should have rolled right over them. Tell me who the tougher fighters in World War II was when it came to the Russian front. It was the Ukrainians. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into this. I know I'm getting off track on a lot of this, but what this does include, we see the big highlight reel when it comes to the men landing on the moon. One step for humanity, one step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Here we see, even though it is still edited down, the dramatic build-up, the everybody collectively holding their breaths as these men take the ultimate risk. It's not even just that they got to the moon. Once they got to the moon, they had to go, well, do we have enough energy to even stick around and step outside? Or do we need to get gone right then? And taking that risk, will we get back if we take the time to step out there? Everybody had to agree at that moment, even after they landed. A number of people, not just the men in the capsule, a number of people at every level had to agree that something like this could happen even after they landed on the moon. It's not just that they landed on the moon, it's that they walked on it. And you get to see reflections of news people from around the world. You see Americans gathering down in Florida, Cape Canaveral, and just standing outside waiting. People standing in the cold out in New York City. People in California parking their cars outside of church I don't know how that figured into it, but in their cars, church in their cars. Yeah, either way, it's the world. You got to see it as the world saw it in that time. No, it's not a minute by minute, second by second kind of recreation. It is the most important highlights, the most important parts, but really expanded from what I'd ever seen before. And to me, it choked me up. It almost brought a tear to my eye, because you see people and they interview people, what they think about it, what's useful. And I mentioned the people who are just like, why are we spending money on this? How people are hungry. Yeah. But then we see the collective cheer rise up in 1969 when they actually land. It's something that I don't think the world has really ever experienced properly since. Not in a good way, anyway. The last time the world was constantly looking at the television at the same time was probably 9/11. Yeah, there's been elections, there's been other tragedies that always pull us toward the TV or the internet these days. But 9/11 was probably the last time. Just that was the only thing that was happening. And that was not a great thing. This moment was the last time everybody was paying attention, outside of the MASH finale, but everybody was paying attention at one time through this creaky new technology of television and experiencing it as one, cheering as one. Wherever they were, everything stopped until that happened in July of 1969. To me, this is a great exploration of that moment, the spirit of that moment, the sacrifice of those moments. And of course, even after the landing on the moon, it's not just about that. It's about the missions that happened afterwards and how everybody was just like, I went to the moon now. It's not a big deal anymore. Until Apollo 13 came around, and then Lovell and everybody else. I mean, Tom Hanks made a movie. I think Ron Howard directed it. Tom Hanks made a movie as Jim Lovell. Is it Lovell? It's Lovell. It's not Lovell, but it's Lovell. And their experience on that ship, struggling to survive a return to Earth when something terribly goes wrong. Houston, we have a problem. That's where that comes from. So yeah, and then they talk about what has come out of the space program ever since, leading up to the first imaginings of the shuttle program in the 80s. So we have not been to the moon since those early Apollo missions, And a lot of them realize that that were interviewed for this will probably never see the next visits to the moon in their lifetimes. And most of them are pretty much right, unfortunately. At this point, I think the science program, whether it's NASA or it's SpaceX or another independent thing, there's plenty of other countries that are doing these kind of things, working together with the International Space Station to work together to learn things more about space, about the science to survive space, to move beyond our world, has the ability to find new energies, new minerals, new technology that will take us far beyond anything we understand now. 100 years before man landing on the moon, we could dream about it. We could write stories about it. It doesn't mean that it was ever going to happen. 1969, yeah, we're 30, 50, 55 years from then right now. Things have changed. And they're going to change even more so, as long as we're not dragged backwards by certain people. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. We'll figure it out sometime this year, whether we have a future or not. Speaking of future, I just picked this number, but we're not going to do it. Number 31. Because tomorrow, Inside Out 2 comes to Disney+. So, whatever number 31 was, we're not watching that. We're watching Inside Out 2. It's grand premiere probably at midnight tonight, unless they do like a Marvel thing where they release it at 6 p.m. for whatever reason. No, I think they do that to avoid having people get spoiled by other people who happen to stay up early or late to see it. I don't know. But either way, Inside Out 2, probably the biggest movie of 2024 so far. The biggest animated film of all time. Not bigger than Deadpool and Wolverine. The biggest animated film of all time, Inside Out 2, and the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.